What is one thing you want Louisville residents to understand about how you would lead that may not come through in campaign ads or headlines?
Good, because I don't have $1 million war chest, so I don't have a lot of TV, but I do have a lot of community. I have a lot of working across lines of difference. I manage $1 million budgets with the nonprofits that I help run with no discrepancies. I know how to do the job, but being a candidate and doing a job are two different things. I'm running this as a candidate that is not lying to you, that will keep her word, that will make sure you're at the table, that will listen and take action steps, and I'm looking forward to hiring more Louisvillians into Metro government who are ready for the changes that we need. I won't undo big business. Nobody can do that. A mayor has to deal with big business. But what we've had is mayors who only focus on big business and not the everyday needs of people. I live in the Louisville that you live in, and I'm ready to lead with you.
Ms. Burnell.
Can you repeat that for me?
Yes. What is one thing you want Louisville residents to understand about how you would lead that may not come through in campaign ads or headlines?
Okay. I want people to know that I will bring integrity to my administration, that I truly understand what transparency and accountability mean, not just lip service to it. Our city has been co-opted by a developer supremacy mentality, which means unrestrained development at all costs, and we're not being given a voice in that. The people of this city deserve to have a voice in what their neighborhoods look like and what their communities look like in the future of our city. So I want to make sure people that understand that I'm ready to listen and I'm ready to serve, and I understand this is a public service position. I will lead with you. Thank you.
Mr. Datillo.
Well, I'm not afraid of a fight. Most people say that they don't want to get into politics because they're afraid of their name being ruined or how they may turn out. I'm not worried about it. I've already had my reputation ruined multiple times, and I've clawed my way back from every one of them. I've been at the very bottom, and I know what it looks like down there, and I know how to get the people that are still down there up to where they need to be. I have never shied away from talking about corruption or where waste is taking place. As a matter of fact, everywhere I go, it gets exposed.
Mr. Hurt.
Thank you. When I founded Orchestra Enigmatic in 2012 here in Louisville, I set my goal as being the chief collaborator. When I say that the city is being managed, not governed, this is what I mean. Decisions are made at a distance for us, and they're handed to us. My leadership style is by elevating voices. I bring whoever I can into the room, and I listen. And I listen for weighted words, like every artist does. Thank you.
Repeating the question, Mr. Bailey, what is one thing you want Louisville residents to understand about how you would lead that may not come through in campaign ads or headlines?
Well, I haven't had much publicity, so I'd say everyone is equal, and I will fight for you. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care about any aspects of you besides you being a Louisville citizen. If you are in Louisville, you are my people. I will fight for you. I'm not scared of what's to come. I expect lawsuits and stuff. If that happens, that means that's a good thing, because I'm fighting for what's right. I yield my time.
Mr. Greenberg.
Over the past 3 years, Louisville's been through a lot. The Old National Bank shooting on April 10th of 2023. Floods and tornadoes in spring of last year. The UPS plane crash last November. A federal government shutdown. Challenging times that have brought our community together. And through all of those, what I've realized most is it's about helping individual people. And while that might not always get the headline, it's about providing for the senior to make sure that they don't miss a meal when the federal government cuts their funding. Finding ways to provide more health care so that families in need can continue to be healthy. Helping people get back into their home after they've been flooded out. Supporting each one of the victims of the deadly UPS plane crash. That's what local government is about. It's about helping people and always doing the right thing for people all across our city. I ask for your vote and look forward to continue moving Louisville in a new direction.
Mr. DeVore.
by the grace of God, I am here. This is my third time. This is my time to serve. I have been working with West End folks for over 10 years. You know, the old saying is the journey that we take, relationships that we make, good and bad and ugly. And sometimes we got to get through the ugly to find out the real truth and find solutions. Cole Green is a prime example of that. Bishop Lyons and a couple of the guys down there created a document where that when they get pulled over, they know exactly what's going on when it comes to the procedures between a driver and the police officer. That came from the very basics of community work and effort. And the point of the matter is that I'm here to serve you, including the independent. We got 75,000 independents out there. Go vote.